have Matt Mclarty, right, about knowledge workers in the world unite, low code, no code, and the future of digital businesses. So the first talk was a great introduction. So Matt
Perfect.
is Global Field CTO and VP at MuleSoft. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Eddie, what's up? Good to see you.
Good to see you. We have a panel right after with some API folks, but first, let's talk about knowledge workers of the world unite.
Yes, that's my big title here. And this is a brand new talk. That was a great segue from Francis's talk there because I think he covered a lot in a very specific detail about what I want to talk about. And the only thing I'll say is I kind of went all in on this low code term. He was using no code. They can be sort of synonymous, right? But I want to talk big context here around what that talk was really about, which is to say, like, what's going on here? We in the API community, I think for a long time have been, promoting this idea of consumability and focusing on consumers. Well, now there's this whole new category of tooling which kind of gets to that heart of how do we make digital components as consumable as possible. So that's what I want to talk about. I'm Matt Mclarty. I'm at MuleSoft, Global Field CTO. I lead a group called the Digital Transformation Office, and I'm working uh, on a daily basis with big organizations who are going through digital transformations. And there's a lot of common patterns that we see. So this is sort of, it's a macro talk. I'm not going to get into specifics on tools or anything like that. So I'm just hoping you'll come along with me on this journey. So where I want to start is, if low code is the answer, what's the question, right? Because I think in the tech field, we like to start with the tools, but maybe that's not always the best place to start. And, I think what I'm seeing, the reality I'm seeing, and I think the data bears it out in terms of companies that are out there is, look, we all get that we're in this digital era now. Digital economy is running strong. There's hiccups, but the future of growth in business, so much of it is around digital opportunities, digital channels. And so, it can be anywhere from, hey, we want to be personalizing our customer experiences through data. We want to take advantage of machine learning and automating things and, using all this contextual information we have to just make things better and more optimized. We want to have new device channels. We want to be more data driven, even in our decision making. And we have all these digital ecosystems that we can plug into and find new ways of making money, new business models. And all that's great. And everybody accepts that and understands that. But we kind of hit a wall. Like, there have been studies done showing that the vast majority of money being spent on digital transformation kind of runs up against, you know, fits and starts and failures. And we have all these issues that we're dealing with, right? Developers, we just talked about that 0.3%, right? They're burning out. They're overwhelmed with demand. We heard about, Francis mentioned that CTOs and CIOs are saying, hey, we want no code tools because, we can't keep up with the demand. As we build things, we layer on more technical debt. It becomes increasingly hard to pull pieces out, migrate things. Skills can be scarce. We still have this business IT dynamic. We were talking about the role of IT there. And all this architectural complexity means that just, when it should be getting easier for us to do stuff, it seems like it can be getting harder for us to do stuff. And, we go through these phases of, maybe we personally don't because we only live for so long. But in the business world, we have seen changes like this happen before. I have a whole other talk track on how we transitioned from the Industrial Revolution, transition from steam power to electrical power. But here I want to just kind of focus on how things are being built in the previous era of big business around mass manufacturing and distribution, right? If we look at the automotive industry kind of as our template, cars were invented and they were kind of built in a garage, and you'd have one person getting all the pieces, putting it all together, a real serious craftsperson who could build a car, and they would go out in, 1890 or whatever it was, and here's the first Benz, I think, electric wagon or whatever it was called on the left. And it was really, to meet the demand of customers who were like, hey, we all want a car. We had the assembly line came out. And the assembly line was all about mass manufacturing and division of labor and being able to actually make automaking jobs the middle class job, the one of the most popular jobs that a person could have in the 20th century, right? I mean, hey, times change there too, but the point here is in in terms of meeting the scale needed for the potential of the mass manufacturing economy, we had to come up with new ways of work. We had to divide the work. We had to empower the masses to be part of building the products, right? And I don't think we're there yet when it comes to software, right? If we're only tapping 0.3% of the population to do the work and all the growth and all of the opportunities in the digital space, there's a problem here. So there's a great book that was written in 2009 by W. Brian Arthur, who works at the Santa Fe Institute, where it's a whole institute focused on studying complexity, which is great. But it's a book that really studies this nature of technology and what is technology about. There's awesome stuff in there about breaking down and unpacking technology from natural phenomena being harnessed for a purpose and all this stuff. But one line stood out to me when I read it the first time, and I've been referencing it ever since, which is, we think about the division of labor and assembly line for manufacturing world. In the digital world, in the technological economy, it's all about modularity. It's all about finding the right level of modularity. And hey, it's API Days interface event here, right? We are all believers in modularity, and we have recognized how powerful it is to go API first and create business capabilities behind APIs, and how much that helps organizations scale. And that's my day job, is helping organizations do exactly that. There's another person who wrote something that wasn't as good. Okay, I wrote this article 7 years ago now in TechCrunch, where I got really excited because there was this open letter that was sent out with a bunch of co-signers talking about the need to make software engineering more accessible. And again, I referenced that quote, by the way, on the previous slide, but I was talking about modularity and how you need to have building blocks to as a starting point to come up with this new sort of digital economy. You need to have education and instructions around how to use those building blocks, and you need to have the tools that make it easy to harness those building blocks in building new solutions. And at that time, I was very much talking about APIs and saying, hey, everybody get on board with APIs. But you can actually generalize that concept, right? When we think about it, right now we're building APIs because we want to attract the right developers who have a need to build solutions. We want them to use our APIs to do that solution, or we want to help people find the right APIs to build their solutions. Those are the building blocks. But they don't have to be APIs, right? They could be other types of building blocks. There could be other types of consumers that can be builders in that space, right? And obviously, as I've said, APIs are a big look at the success stories we built around APIs. Look at the innovation that we've done with these building blocks. Look at this example of ordering a lift over a smart speaker, an Alexa. Oh, I probably may be triggering people's smart speakers, and how it's been built on top of APIs and AWS and APIs and Lyft, and then utilizing Google Maps and Stripe and Twilio, and then even running the whole infrastructure on AWS using APIs, right? We know how to do modularity when it comes to APIs, right? And from a division of labor perspective, we can look at this and say, yeah, we've divided up the work, right? We've actually created a scalable model where we can decouple the work that a consumer is doing and building their app that's going to appeal to an end user, and the work that happens behind the scenes to build the API product, or even build and run the platform where you've got all the API products running and API components running, right? We've done it. We've divided the work. The issue we have is we've divided it up amongst that 0.3%. We've divided it up amongst the developers. And if we're only drawing from such a narrow pool, we can just see where the bottlenecks are going to come into play. Now, I've got the stats here, which I've got sources for these, right? Talking about the 0.3%. I'm not going to do the mental math right now, but here's the reality. We've got those 26 million software developers, which even by the stat source that I think that was from IDC that had that number, even almost half of those are just sort of hobbyists and part-timers, right? The core full-time developers, it's an even much smaller number. But Gartner did work to say, okay, if we think about this category of knowledge workers, so people whose job just generally is involving using technology or or using information as the core of their job, there's a billion of those, right? We've got like a 40-to-1 ratio happening here. It would be really nice if we could tap those billion to help supplement those 26 million, right? And I think when we start out talking about low code, this goes back to the starting of the presentation where I said, if this is the answer, what's the question? It's tempting to look at the tooling and say, this is going to get you faster to market. It's going to improve the productivity of your teams. It's going to create more predictability because, having constraints and around this, it's all good. But I think the main point of low code is really this bringing more people into the tent, right? We have a fundamental societal issue with shifting as we shift these economic eras, right? We have a big problem right now if we're bottlenecking on all the developers, if we're limiting the distribution of wealth. There's all different ways we can analyze it. But the bottom line is we need a way to get more people into the tent of building digital solutions. That to me is the big promise of low code, no code technology, right? Is that yes, we've got people who know to use technology, but there's a lot of problems not just the scaling issue when you don't have those people as part of building the solutions. Now, there's a bit of a stereotype around low code, no code solutions, right? They've actually been around a long time. And if we look at the objections to them, I think it's fair to say a lot of the objections come from developers who are aware of all the power they can put into code-based solutions and the control level and the optimization you can use with code and the engineering discipline you can put around it to make things run well and the ownership issues. Like there's a lot of objections get thrown out by developers and they can be quite fair, right? Like there's your mileage may vary depending on the tooling that you're using. A lot of this stuff is historical though, like low code, no code tooling has evolved immensely. I mean, I think a lot of the reason we get these objections is a mistrust of the platforms and maybe a mistrust of people other than developers building digital stuff because things can go wrong because there have been disjointed shadow IT. So we have to take those objections seriously and think about what does a future look like that will help bring more people into the tent, but do it in a way that's not going to compromise the quality of the solutions. So I see these 4 areas as being fundamental to cracking the low code or the no code, right? Making it so that we actually get to that next level in our industry where we are inclusive of builders beyond coders. Number 1, you do have to have the high quality tools that are going to play nice with the practices we have around the rest of the distributed software world, right? In other words, interoperability, being able to integrate easily, being very consumable by all personas. I think Francis did a great job of articulating some of the personas that he's encountering. There's a lot more even that we can get into. Anyone in the organization who might be able to contribute to building these digital solutions. And you want to have the operability levels at enterprise quality. So scalability, security, performance, all that stuff. Secondly, you need the knowledge workers who are going to be empowered to actually become builders. And that's a mindset shift too, right? You have to have people who are willing to do that, who are going to embrace the idea that they now have some control over what they're going to build and use. And the developers have to be on board with it, right? The responsibilities, I think, for the hardcore developers will shift to being the experts in the room, to being the enablers of the knowledge workers, but also to really take care of those system level concerns that require the deeper engineering practices around creating the platform, managing the platform, looking at the dependencies and the linkages and interactions between all the components in there. There's always going to be enough work for IT. If anyone's worried that they're going to be no coded out of a job, like this, that's not a chance just because of the growth trajectory. And then finally, bringing this all together with a new operating model that allows you to balance out the different types of work that are going on and make everyone play nice. So this is my view of what's needed. I'm going to do a little illustration here, and this is sort of, there's like no code, low code is a huge category of tooling. So I'm going to take a very specific view of the world. And what I'm hoping to achieve, like if we look at that operating model in a little more detail, right? This is, I admit, this is idealistic. But if you think about developers and IT on one hand and the knowledge workers on the other hand, this is really about IT empowering the knowledge workers with the tools. In this case, I'm going to use a concept called composable connectors. This is something that, within MuleSoft and we in our methodology around helping organizations drive API-led connectivity, our approach is to look at how we can provide low-code connectors that will allow non-developers, non-coders to go out and actually create connected workflows that allow them to do their jobs more easily. So that's my example of a low-code tooling, giving that to the knowledge workers, having them create those workflows, those automations, which then gets fed into the IT team and the developer team, who can then do analysis around that, find out, first of all, what do these people care about? What are they working on? And then really think about what can be, what else can be offered in that area, what can be optimized in that area, and then providing more optimized connectors back to the knowledge workers who can then, again, do their work. And we have line of sight in IT. So I think, I can picture this feedback loop or this virtuous circle where instead of it just being, requirements being thrown over the wall from business to IT, or in some cases, especially with knowledge workers who are out there on the front lines in the field, their channel to communicate their needs to IT today can be very convoluted and go through many different filters and create a broken telephone effect. So, this is just really direct communication. It's really kind of agile spirit here around how this can all work. So I'll use an example, and I brought up the automotive example early on. Imagine a automotive company who's got a dealer network, and in all of their different dealer instances, maybe they have their own CRM instances where they've got administrators in the dealership. They're the IT people on site, but they're not really full-blown coding IT. And then you've got their users who are the sales staff in the dealership. Imagine you were to offer them just some simple connectors like, here's a way to find out about inventory. Here's a way to find out about how to book services, services for vehicles. Here's a way to find out information on financing, right? That would allow these sales administrators to build some workflows that would help those sales staff go out and do things like confirm that you have a new vehicle on the lot, or find a new, uh, initiate service for a new customer vehicle, or initiate financing, at the time that a customer wants to make the purchase, right? They could string together some workflow, make that dealership's life a lot easier. Things that used to require a lot of phone calls or conversations, they can automate that process. This is fairly straightforward, and we can see where we're actually connecting. We're actually using APIs in conjunction with these connectors, low-code connectors, to make that work. Well, over some time down the road, that's useful right out of the gate. But down the road, as IT gets in the loop and they start analyzing things, they can actually say, you know what? We noticed that those three services are being used in conjunction a lot. Maybe we can offer a process, an API and a process and an associated connector that makes it really easy for you to just complete a sale. And in that process, you would check the inventory, book the initial servicing, and confirm the financing all in one go. And then you're going to make it even easier for those sales CRM administrators to build workflows using that. That then opens up even more possibilities, right? That process might be reusable if you wanted to start selling cars online more, right? Something that I'm sure dealerships are very afraid of, but for the company could be very helpful if you wanted to open up a new channel there. Furthermore, you could find that, we noticed that in this process, the admin could say, that stuff was really useful that you gave me to build that workflow. But one thing that was missing is a lot of times people want to trade their vehicle in. And, maybe there's a way we could get information about resale value through other, third parties. And so maybe the IT team could build a connector there, which could be factored in. So, the future I see is not so much that IT gets replaced and developers are put out of jobs because we've got these new cool no-code, low-code tools. I think that if we all accept that the landscape of companies when it comes to software and digital technologies is always going to be very complex. Having more brain power, more unique skills being brought into the a position of designing, building, executing the digital solutions is just it's the only way forward if we're going to scale things. And I think that the companies that are able to empower those knowledge workers, but do it in a way that still gets the most out of their true hardcore software engineering teams are the ones who are going to find the right balance and succeed the most. So, it's a short session here. I'll have lots more to say on these topics and how it goes. But this is I think the bottom line coming out of this presentation is that it's an inevitability. We have to embrace more builders coming into the digital community. So for our API community, which is an awesome community, an open-minded community, I would say just be open-minded to these building blocks that we're going to see inherently. Be welcoming to a new community of digital builders, right? At the same time, you are technical experts as well. Be skeptical and vet the tooling that comes in, right? Make sure they continually are improved and live up to the quality standards that are required for enterprise technology. Consider what that operating model is going to look like in your companies or the companies that you work with. And I think that this idea of knowledge worker is a pretty broad brush, right? So I like the way Francis was articulating certain personas. I think there are going to be some pretty common ones that we see that we can start to figure out who the people are that are going to be the most effective builders, what are their roles, what are their skills, so we can build the tools for them. That's it. I'll stop sharing now so I can go back and see Mehdi.
Thank you, Matt. Just one question before the panel with some usual suspects of the API space. Just one question. So, MuleSoft has evangelized this really, core API, process APIs, experience APIs, and now we will have, let's say, probably no-code orchestration, triggering, whatever, mixing tool, right? It seems we are able to enable more people on the closest to the customer, right? They're closer to the customer more than ever. Like experience APIs was really the end layer. Now it's even business citizen developers, right? And the other point is that in his book, Jeff Lawson, Ask Your Developers, he said developers are really creative minds and creative persons can build applications that have a lot of value, but maybe the business is also about a lot of creative person who know really well the customer needs. And so if they're able to build the apps themselves, at least components, or it's a huge amount of value that can be liberated, right?
Completely. Just, think about, and I think, we all have agendas with the things that we write, right? We know, we know the agenda of that book. It's a great book, but yes, there are a lot of creative developers. There are a lot of developers though who are very, very much engineers and optimizers, right? So it's not like the developer personality is always inherently creative. It's because there's a big population of developers who are creative because there's a big population of people who are creative. But think of all the creative people, to your point, that are not in the loop right now because they don't have that level of technical acumen. And I think that even not just focusing on just creativity, but even just knowing the business, right? Think about how much, if you put tools in the hands of people who are on the front lines executing things, the power there. Like we've always seen this in the API community, right? Where we could, as much as we may think we understand what's going on, you put an API out there and let people just play with it. There are always ideas that you never would have thought of that afterwards it's like total sense. Oh, of course, that's what they would want to use this for. Same thing here, right? You're going to reach a much bigger population.
So we were limiting creativity to developers because they were only one being able to build application. Now we will liberate total creativity because everybody will be able to generate value, right?
That's definitely the idea.